go. Daniel's blog, Stop Killing Games and the EU, When Activism Meets Legal Reality. That's an interesting start. I find it ultimately ironic that this guy already fucking sounds like uh, sounds like he's like uppity, right? He's already talking down to us about this situation. So that's a good start. Ooh, hold on. A bit soy, yeah, you're right, a bit soy. I ultimately find it ironic that the reason why Stop Killing Games has to exist in the first place is EU laws. Countries with fair use and fair dealing, written by Satire Software, totally not pirate software. that's a good point. Now I wonder. Countries with fair use or fair dealing doctrines, like the US, Canada, and the UK, have provisions to cover the preservation of games via modding and emulation. This is not true. Modding, yes, but emulation gets smacked down all the time. Nintendo smacks down emulation constantly, and that emulation could be coming out of the US. So this is bullshit. You can mod games, but if they take the game, can anyone mod the crew? Can anyone mod the crew to be playable? No, they can't, because the single player version of it is gone. So that's already bullshit right there. Fair use lets you do these things, like lets you do modding. Emulation, I question though, right? I've seen emulation things, and I think there are some cases where companies are okay with it, but I'm pretty sure it's clearly Thor in a fake mustache and glasses. Oh. However, for the EU, due to DRM, you realize gamers have been complaining about DRM since the beginning of DRM. No gamer likes DRM for all the same reasons that Stop Killing Games is talking about it. Associated laws and regulations, publishers and game devs have the right to control their copyright. Yeah, this is straight this is straight up pirate software. Have the right to control their copyright via an online system which ultimately makes EOL builds that the movement is hoping for moot. I forget what EOL builds is. And end of life builds that the movement is hoping for moot. The legal framework they're actually fighting. The EU operates under the Information Society. I'm going to need some of you guys who may know this better than I do. Directive 2001-29 EC, which provides an exhaustive list of copyright exceptions rather than the open-ended fair use doctrine employed by the United States. Okay. Fair use? I'm pretty sure fair use is a defense. Fair use is a doctrine in the United States that permits limited use of copyright materials without having to first acquire permission from the copyright holder. So like what this guy is saying is that I can already just completely steal the code for a game, and it's not pirating because it's under fair use if the game is no longer there. And I just don't think that's true. It allows for the unlicensed use of copyright protected works in certain circumstances, such as for the Okay, all right, let's... This guy's already full of bullshit. Let's bring this up. Fair use. I read all of that part. Let's read the end of it. For the purposes of commentary, criticism, or parody. For the purposes of commentary, criticism, or parody. This Daniel Software is not a fair use argument. Like I can't just play a game at the because it's fair use. Me being able to play a game and critique it is a form of fair use, though not completely. Gaming companies have always had the right to take down your game for playing the whole thing. They stopped doing it because it was beneficial to them, right? For the beginning of a lot of these, especially when money started getting involved, they were taking down creators who were playing games. But then they noticed, oh, well, if these guys play our games, more people go out and buy it. So it became an inner working system that the laws didn't need to be allowed with. It shows that with where one of the few companies that'll still do that is Nintendo. They're notorious for doing these different things and even taking down YouTubers' videos. So fair use has nothing to do with what he's talking about. U.S. fair use has nothing to do with this. Article 6 of the directive requires member states to provide adequate legal protection against circumventive of technology measures. Exactly what Stop Gaming wants to override. Adequate legal protection against So he's saying that, yeah, this is 100% pirate software. There's no way it's not. Against circumventive of technology measures. He's saying the same exact thing that pirate software was saying, right? You want us to take off the things that are going to allow people to pirate the game, and that's not what it's saying. Since Stop Killing Games claims to be the copyrights to stay as is, by extension, the systems to protect copyrights will also stay as is. Okay, but here's the thing. You're protecting the copyright of a game because you don't want that game to you want to keep making money off of that game, right? That's completely legitimate. It's your game. If someone makes a copy of that game, you're not getting the money for it, especially if they're giving that copy away. Even worse, if they're selling that copy. But when the game is no longer making money, then is it a strike against the copyright? I've heard some arguments say, about giving out the code, it may cause problems. And then, there's the minute details of micro services that are used in these games. But this is completely off base. They're not calling for you to get rid of DRM. They're calling for you to lift DRM when the game is no longer being used, so that you can keep playing it. On the other hand, if there was an IP leased by the publisher to be used for X years, once the time is up, it is illegal for the publisher and its user to continue using the IP. This is why I think the Crew 2 was a bad argument, it was a bad game to use, because yes, there were tons of licenses for the vehicles, right? So how does that work in the case of the Stop Killing Games initiative? Would the Crew 2 actually be one of the exceptions because of that licensing agreement? It's very likely that games will need to pay extra to maintain a license to use copyright material. So the game is playable, but not free. Yeah, it can be, right? This could be an exception. You're using the Crew 2 to try and say it, but is this the thing for every single game? And is there not a way around it, right? It is acceptable to SKG supporters. A cursory glance of the Discord says no. Jesus Christ. But here's where it gets practically absurd. The EU already has comprehensive consumer protection mechanics. The Consumer Rights Directive covers digital content sales. Digital Content Directive specifically addresses digital content conformity. Here we go. I hate you, Nasmr, because this is making me be extremely autistic towards what this guy is saying. Yo, I specifically asked Rost about this, by the way. What did he say? Consumer rights. On Gronkin? Nice. Nice. Okay. Directive of the European Parliament and the Council. For the directive has been reviewed. He said they went over it all and it doesn't address this issue. So, what, like the initiative doesn't address the issue, or the issue doesn't address the consumer rights? I mean, this is a big bill, so to figure out, I'll have to check that out later if I get too autistic on it. I mean, yeah, it may not be addressed in this bill just because it's talking about. Yeah, it sounds nice. It sounds like consumer directives, but did you notice something about that? Let's see what he says after this. The EU consumer rights don't cover killing games. Fair enough. The Consumer Protective Corporation Network can levy fines of up to 4% of annual turnover for violations. The upcoming Digital Fairness Act will specifically look at video games in particular in relation to young people and address gambling like features in video games. Okay, yeah, but that's the features in video games, and gambling is them trying to break it. Does this new initiative come up talk about killing games? No, it's probably looking at what age people should play games, or maybe doing something like China does where it cuts off play. So one thing you'll notice here, the movement is essentially asking for the rights that don't exist while ignoring the extensive protections that already do. So fun fact with this, if you want to really look at this, where does he show that these consumer rights directives have protections for killing games? I mean, if this is true, which it looks like it's not, just link the number in the document that says, line 52 says that blah, 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 blah. But he didn't do any of this. You're just saying that there are consumer protections, even though the consumer protections aren't covering the games, at least from what Nasmr has told me. Government overreach and legal contradictions. See, this word always sparks anger in me because of the libertarian I am. And legal contradictions. However, the core controversy is that even this, it's about asking the government to legislate and regulate how games are even made. To a point, yeah. Not only is this highly controversial and smells of government overreach, it clashes with so many other laws and regulations that SKG supporters fail to educate themselves about. God damn. The EU has been aggressively enforcing competitive law in gaming, fining Valve and 5 publishers $7.9 million for geo-blocking practices. Since 2010, the number of... What does this have to do with... What does geo-blocking have to do with that? Since 2010, the number of merger notifications filed before the European Commission regarding the gaming industry has tripled. Well, yeah, I wonder why. What happened in, let's see, 2010, games. Let's see what games came out during that time. 2010 video games. Red Dead Redemption came out, Limbo, God of War, DJ Hero, League of Legends, Assassin's Creed 2, FIFA, which has always been, FIFA 10 came out, which has always been a hot topic around gamings. Mass Effect 2, StarCraft, Rock Band. When did... What year? What year? Hold on, let's see. EA Games 2010. Nope, that wasn't. When was Battlefronts released? Two released. So that was in 2005. No, not Battlefronts 2. It was Battlefronts, was it 3 or 4? 2 was the based one. Battlefront. Or was it just Battlefront? EA. Release date. There we go. There we go. So 2015. So no, that wasn't it. But that was right around the time that 2010, there was a lot of hype about microtransactions starting to make their way into gaming and different things like that. So, and then the big one was, in my opinion, one that really started turning heads was Battlefront because of how egregious its loot boxes were. And people started talking about loot boxes. Where were we? Did I go down a little bit too much? Yes. Yeah, the EU has since 2010 the number of merger notifications filed. Oh, what are merger notifications? Let's go with that because I may be just completely off base. Copy merger notifications. EU. The European Union merger notifications are a critical step in the process of concluding a merger. The European Commission's merger regulations require that any concentration within the EU dimensions must be notified to the. Okay, hold on. The European Commission has streamlined the merger control. This sounds like companies merging. Legislation, the new filing forms, such as a short form CO, are designed to be used. The loot boxes and microtransactions era was one of its kind. Yeah, it was crazy growing up through that era and seeing just how bad it was. Loot boxes are pretty much dying out. Microtransactions are kind of here to stay, I think. But a lot more companies are just sticking with skins. I think a lot of the pay to win stuff, at least in the majority of gaming, is starting to go away. So it's just, I don't think it's as profitable outside of FIFA, and I know FIFA has been losing out on it. People are just getting tired of it. The EU is aggressively. I don't know what merger notifications have to do regarding the games industry has tripled. I don't know what games industry mergers have to do with stop killing games. The Digital Service Act imposes extraterritorial obligations on gaming companies serving EU users. GDPR restricts international data transfer, which directly conflicts with game preservation goals requiring cross-border data movement. I don't know enough about this to say anything about it. But so far, a lot of this just looks like bullshit. Okay, what? Why would a end of life plan not comply with data transfers? What international data transfers would be done to have a subset plan? I mean, yeah, that's a good point. I don't know much about this data transfer app and like how that like is it would this would Steam not have a problem with data transfers? If that was this would actually explain that a potential for counter arguments and solutions. You want to come on, Nasmr? Because you seem to talk about this a little bit more. I can jump into my voice thing. And you can come on and we can talk about it while we go through this. Because you seem to have more knowledge on at least the European side and the data transfer stuff. Here, let me. Where am I? There we go. Let me put on some shorts and a t-shirt on the and join on mobile in 5. All right, sure thing. Just jump into. Let me know when you're in the waiting room. All right. I'll pop it myself in here. All right. Huh. And you don't have to be dressed for me, Nasmir. It's okay. It's, I would just always assume you're dressed. Every single one of the regulatory frameworks would create compliance nightmares for the technical mandates SKG is demanding. How would they require, this is a document. If you're going to make a document like this, go into detail. Tell me why. You're spending all this time typing autistically out, these acts. Show me how, instead of just saying it would cause regulatory or it would create regulatory compliance issues, right? just it's so hard for me to believe any of this. Ross Scott's undefined law delusion. The most maddening aspect of this campaign, if this isn't pirate software, this could be God, what's his name? His fake lawyer guy that tried to get private parts, or that tried to strong arm private parts. Well, that did strong arm private parts. The laws are not undefined, they're comprehensive, and okay. The most maddening aspect of this campaign is Ross's central claim that the laws wasn't written for this situation and that laws are undefined and contradictory. This is complete nonsense. The laws are not undefined. They're comprehensive and they clearly favor public. Okay. They favor publishers. His movement is to favor consumers. The EU Information Society Directive explicitly protects. All right, you're in. Let me pull you up here. There we go. Let's pull you over. Hey, what's going on? Can you hear me?
Yo, let me get the speakers on. How do I do that?
The speaker's on? Can you hear me? I'm confused. It sounds. I can hear you, barely. Let me. Hello. Let me see if I can turn myself up. Try and turn me up on there. Voice. Yeah, everything's turned up to the max on my side. Is it just that quiet?
Checking.
All right.
Hello, I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you. You're good. We're just old manning it back and forth. Cool. So, let's kind of go up to that data transfer thing. Do you know a little bit more about that? Like, what are they referring to data transfer?
So in the UK, we still retain these data protection rights, which is that companies cannot, share data or send it over, and that is like legacy law from the EU. So pretty much the same principle is like companies can't transfer data and like without your knowledge or permission, and you should be allowed access to it at all times. Upon request.
Yeah. Okay.
To what they're holding on you. My question would be like, okay, so if a game is like, okay, we're shutting down now and we're going to allow community-run servers, I'm like, what data? The user account, I guess, but that would be the user accepting that responsibility.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing.
I don't see what the non-compliance is. Maybe, like, this is why I feel like Pirate and his lot who were arguing for this are so hypocritical, because they point to Ross's initiative and say, oh, it's vague, but then they just bring up these roadblocks and say, these vague roadblocks, and say, it's impossible because data. And then when you actually explore into it, you're like, no, it's possible. I don't think they're being like good faith.
No, it's definitely not good faith. Like I said, you look up here, and pretty much every time they bring these articles or these directives up, they're not going into any detail with it. I don't see how data transfer, like a company having to tell you about data transfer, you're right, it goes into the user's hands, and then it's no longer their problem. So say a game is put into a state where someone can make their private servers on it, and you go into that private server and your data is stolen, or they're pulling data from you. That's not on the company that used to own the game. That's on that server that is unlawfully doing something like that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
kind of like there could be a provision. This is where I'm saying, right, is then if an actual dialogue was proposed, there could be a counterclaim of like, okay, well, the company can have the provision of like a month out, a week out from the end of life thing. It's like, okay, we're going to open up community run servers. Please acknowledge that you accept the risks and all that.
Yeah, yeah. Simple line in the code, or even when you download whatever you need to get onto the game, right? I
Yeah.
think I remember one person talking a while back about this the first time it came up, and they were saying like you don't necessarily like the server side code would have to be on the server. You can't put it on the client for something as big as like WoW, but you could have normal users be able to download just the client side stuff and be able to open it up to the beginning screen. You just wouldn't be able to connect to any servers until a community came together to make a server for it. I don't know. Let's read further, though, into this delusional Ross take. Most of the matting aspect. The law wasn't written for this situation, and the laws are undefined and contradictory. He pisses me off in this part. Pirate does. The laws are undefined and they're comprehensive, and they favor the publisher. Well, yeah, that's the problem. We don't want it to favor the publisher. We want it to favor the consumer.
Yeah, that's the whole point of consumer rights laws.
Yeah. So he's flat out admitting right here, yeah, it's in the publisher's hands. The publishers get to fuck everybody over. Thanks for clearing that up. I'll sign the document. Let me move to the EU real quick. The EU Information Society directives explicitly protects DMR systems. Yeah, that's the problem. Consumer protection laws require disclosure, not indefinite service obligations. Yeah, that's why they want to do the movement. Copyright laws establish clear hierarchies where intellectual property protections take precedence over consumer convenience. Yes, this is exactly what the problem is. All right. Scott's argument boils down. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, can you reread that like indefinite service sentence real quick?
Copyright laws.
Running a service indefinitely.
Oh, yeah. Indefinite. Oh, yeah. The EU Information Society Directive explicitly protects DRM services. Consumer protection laws require disclosure, not indefinite service obligations. Yeah.
Again, this is the problem, right? I know that's what Pirate Software said. That was his talking point about you can't force the publisher to run forever. No one's saying that. This is once again falling into that straw man misrepresentation of what Stop Killing Games is about. It's not about forcing them to provide a service forever. It's about having an end-of-life sunset plan to preserve access for people who have already owned this. So this is another thing with the copyright laws, is the game would no longer be sold. It's just the people who own the service. Like, am I breaking copyright laws when Gran Turismo 1 on the PS1 has run out of its copyright for some of the vehicles? And I play it on the PS1, breaking international copyright law or whatever? No. Same deal here, bro.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thinking of the crew and all of those is like, yeah, they don't have a right to sell the game anymore because they don't have the licenses for the game. But the guy who's already playing it on his server, he's not, or playing it on his computer, he's not. He's not using the license. He doesn't need the license, right?
Yeah.
When I got a hard copy of any racing game, it's going to have all of those cars on there. Need for Speed, I'll use real cars. Me having that disc doesn't mean I need to have the same license the company would have.
Yeah, and the other solution as well is, wow, this one's not as good. It's like where, GTA couldn't get the licenses, so they had like basically alternatives. It's not as good for racing games because people want that, simulation. Mm-hmm. It's an option, but if the copyright has changed between now and Gran Turismo on the PS1, where PS1 players could still play forever indefinitely, and now on modern games they can't because of some change in copyright law, then we need to change it back. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's there's a problem there with it. There used to Disney made its money off of other people's intellectual property, right? Because there used to be the idea of it went to the public market after that point. So maybe we can start moving kind of back in that direction. Maybe not like a game can't completely lose their intel. I'm not saying that Assassin's Creed one day should just become public and everyone can make an Assassin's Creed game, but there needs to be some movement back towards that because it's become so tight. Simon, I want to say real quick, what you missed is we've been going over Pirate Software. We're reading Daniel Software's blog, um, to that's proving Ross wrong.
Yeah, this document, Simon, really does seem like it was written by Pirate Software in a fake mustache and glasses.
Yeah, 100%, like just behind his desk, using his real voice instead of the deep voice, so no one knows it's him. Uh, so Scott's argument boils down to traditional expectations are that games last indefinitely. Okay, no, not really. Which is legally irrelevant. Consumer expectations don't override explicit contractual terms that meet disclosure requirements. Hold on.
Which is why there would be a grandfather clause. But
Yeah.
the games that have done this are exempt, and now moving forward, we're going to go back to what the consumer wants for their consumer rights.
Yeah.
Again, weird point, weird irrelevant point.
Yeah, it's been said over and over again. We don't want to do this to old games. I would like it. I would like it if some of the older games found a way to meet the standards, on their own, but no one's asking for this. And it's also like this idea of you override contractual terms. You have to be accepting of the norm. You have to be accepting of the way it is now. This is just the way it is. The
tradition.
Yeah. The distinction between go ahead. Right? Go ahead.
Sorry, it's just that. They're disagreeing to the contract. It's like, well, my problem is the game. The publishers are allowed to change the contract every month, adding in new provisions, and if you don't accept, you have zero access. Is that fair?
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you buy a game, you're going to have to sign the license agreement. And if you don't want to sign it, you can't. You'll have to refund the game, I guess.
It's like, well, let's say you agree with the first license agreement that they sign, and then a month later they change the terms and say we're allowed to have data miners or whatever on your game. And if you don't agree, you're not allowed to access the product you purchased for. Yeah, well, that's a change in that's them having willy-nilly changes in contractual obligations, but the consumer's not allowed to.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's so one-sided nowadays with these terms and conditions and all this different stuff, where they can put in pretty much anything they want. You got the terms like we can kill the game at any time and things like that. Hey, gaming brethren, what's going on? More or less, they don't self-terminate or come with build dependencies, in other words, that negate the ability to play the game outside of authorization. Not talking about libraries or common SW. More or less, they don't self-terminate or come. Yeah, I see what you're saying about self-terminate. Well, it's like I think what people use the crew for is the biggest thing is, and I forgot about this, is the crew has a single player experience. So in the point of a crew game, Stop Killing Games may say, okay, we don't have the ability to keep the servers up. Hiya, Dad. Good talk. Thank you. We don't have the ability to keep the servers up, but we're releasing the DRM so that you can still play the game single player, right? The big push is single player, and then where it starts to get really muddy is the multiplayer experiences and things like that, which is what really has to be hashed out. Though I don't think it's as hard as some of these people are making it out to be. The distinction between the licensing ownership is centuries-old legal doctrine, not some modern ambiguity that courts are scratching their heads over. What is this? It's still the the distinction between licensing and ownership is centuries-old legal doctrine, not some modern ambiguity that courts are scratching their heads over. No, this has been a fluid thing. Like, yes, the idea of licensing and ownership has existed since we've been writing contracts. But
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the contextual manner of which this licensing is handed out is completely different from, like, I don't know, a car rental license.
yeah, it's as different mediums of consumerism has come out, they've had to adjust that licensing to fit with it. So it's always changing. And now we're asking to readjust that licensing for gaming. Free to play, the cherry on top. Here we go.
Oh
The
boy.
fact the fact that the movement also wants to extend itself to free to play games is also egregious. People did not pay for these games, and microtransactions do not constitute ownership of some licenses to own games in perpetuity. No, but you bought. This is an old argument from the beginning, like from the beginning of loot boxes and skins and the start of the horse armor is you're buying this thing. You're buying something, a skin to go on a skin. But if the game is turned off, that skin is gone. That property that you had means nothing, right? Because it's digital is the argument that it doesn't matter. It's not a physical product, but you as the consumer paid for it. And let's get, you can get into the what $500, $600 skins on League of Legends. You can imagine the amount of money that people put into that game that it just all goes away if they decide to shut down the servers. Yes, this is a problem. This is what we want to change.
Yeah, 100%. I have
Yeah.
nothing to add to that. It's exactly what you just said.
Yeah. The EU Consumer Protective Corporation. God, this guy loves bringing these up, but not explaining how they fit. Whoops. Good thing that wasn't like OnlyFans or something. A clear and transparent, already published principles requiring a clear and transparent pricing for in-game currencies and what does the pricing have to do? Practices to force consumers to purchase unwanted in-game virtual currency. The regulatory framework already addresses the actual problems in first free-to-play games. But what does the monetization have to do with your ownership of the skin? Yeah, they this is protection so that they can't do the money glitches, right? Or the money things where it's like buying the skin costs $5, but you only get $4 worth of currency. So you have to buy two to be able to pay for it, which leaves you that's what this was brought up over, at least from my understanding, and other practices like it. What does this have to do with your usership?
Yeah, exactly. What does this have to do with ownership? This is like someone being like, I don't know, in the 1980s, being like, "Oh, I'm demanding that you add seatbelts to cars," and then replying, "Oh, but the law already has airbags."
Yeah, it's okay, but that doesn't.
Seatbelt issue, bro.
Yeah, it's different issues. A couple of these have been completely different issues of problems solved by the UK. Let's see. The only place that I've seen the whole copyright thing be problem with is with collaborations and losing the rights to licenses. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit earlier on, like for multiplayer games, there might be, well, even then, if it's like COD is probably one of the best ones, or Fortnite. If Fortnite servers shut down and then a community opens up a Fortnite server that really no one's paying for. If they pay for it, they're going to start breaking copyright. Or if they have people pay for it, they're going to start breaking copyright, and then the company can come in and have that shut down. But the skins, if you bought a Nicki Minaj skin in any of those games and you're on the private server, isn't it your right to still have that Nicki Minaj skin? Right? You paid for that.
Yeah. What I said to Wargaming Dad earlier was like, okay, let's look at the Gran Turismo games on like the PS1. I'm pretty sure that the developers and publishers for Gran Turismo on the PS1 have run out of the licenses for the cars used there, but you can still play it and no copyright law is being broken. So unless something has changed between now and then, I don't see how this is an issue. And if something has changed in copyright law between now and then, let's just change it back so that it can facilitate this. Where's the issue? It's just being like, oh no, this is a problem, so therefore impossible. No solutions, no nothing, no alternatives. It's just stonewalling.
It's just, well, this is the way it is. You'll own nothing and like it. Enjoy your bug salad.
Yeah.
But SKG wants to extend preservation requirements to games people got for free. So I don't remember if it was who we were just listening to, Theo, or if I remember reading it somewhere else, but it may have even been you that said it. They're not asking for completely free games, right? They're specifically talking about games that have microtransactions in there. It's like this is written directly into it. You either didn't read the document, Daniel Software, or you're just completely misrepresenting it again.
Yeah, so like for example, I could take the newly released Mecha Break, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't paid anything to the developers of Mecha Break for like rights to the access to the robot, the different skins or mechanics, and I never will because I just don't really want to pay all that money for microtransactions. But I'm having fun with the game.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be entitled to have that access then.
Yeah, right. You wouldn't be able to.
Users who spent even $1 up to 10 grand or whatever it is with the whales would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's like I buy skins. Only game that I buy skins on is Path of Exile and Path of Exile 2, and it's because I like the developers. I like the way they do their microtransactions, and I like some of the skins. So I don't believe that I should get opened up every skin that's in the game, but I would like to be able to play the skins that I did pay for, right? So take Dragon Dogma 1 and the Berserk armor set that were in the game. Capcom lost the license and removed those armor sets from the re-release and the Dark Arisen versions of the game. Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense, right? You can't buy it in the newer versions because of what it is, but if the people are playing the old one and they have it, they should be able to play it on that old one, right? Or maybe, well, I don't know how detailed that would be. Back to pirating software, I see. You know what? Pirating is bad. Yeah, pirating is bad. But I think pirating is a problem with the market, not people just doing. There are always going to be pirators, but if you make it more accessible to the more greater people, the greater audience, then pirating slows down. I think music industry showed that. The entitlement.
It's a service failure, and you can, if you do provide a good service, you can still be mega profitable, even though there will always be pirates, but it's like reducing that percentage.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent some time in Africa during one of my deployments, and something that we saw that it even happens on that level is there were smugglers that were bringing in stuff like cigarettes and things like that, and it was because the taxes on it were so incredibly high that the businesses couldn't make money off of it. So a thriving smuggling market came around. It's kind of the same idea. So yeah, the entitlement is staggering. That is a you need to look in the mirror statement to Mr. Software.
I will never get these pro mega corporations always saying you're entitled for wanting to own what you pay for. Like, what are you on about?
Yeah,
I will never get that mentality.
I used to like it's been such a weird thing for me to really get back onto the internet and like X and stuff like that to see people genuinely shilling for these companies when they're doing bad things and making some of like the worst white knighting takes on them, like, oh well, they do that because this and this. Oh, we should be paying more for games because games were cheaper back then. And it's like, no, what we should have is a market where the prices are determined by what the consumer wants to pay for it, not all the companies changing it to one price because it'll work. Uh, let's see.
Yeah.
The signature struggles to reveal whoops, I keep doing this. The signature struggle reveals the deeper problem. This seems to be a signal, a deep misunderstanding of how games are made and consumed. These people are simply looking for a gamer moment. Wow.
What does that mean?
I have no idea. A gamer moment. I guess a win, you could say. Like, we're just looking for a win because we keep getting rammed by all the large AAA companies.
These fucking gamers, Wargaming Dad, trying to advocate for themselves.
Yeah,
These
how
fucking entitlement, the goal.
Yeah, right. They don't understand what us devs have to go through just to put a game out. 6 years, 6 years to to write a game similar to a game that was written in 1 year by one guy. They just don't understand.
Man. Well, this is the thing, right? Because I'm big into the indie scene, and I watch these guys. There's one, Anenra, the developer for that, Zahid. He will like pop into his Discord voice call and like stream progress of the game, and you can see how there's obviously like a talent and skill and hard work in terms of like learning all of this stuff, and then it just kind of becomes second nature to them. But there's a element of tedium. We have to go in and do like frame by frame by frame by frame animation for like 120 frames or whatever for a 2-second animation. And yeah, that's difficult and that's hard. And I understand that game development is a lot of work for that. But at the same time, that doesn't invalidate people who want to advocate for their rights to keep what they own.
Yeah, yeah. And I've always said like the amount of work you put into something does, and this is kind of like an Asmongold statement too before he went absolutely batshit nuts. Like the amount of work you put into it doesn't matter to the consumer. The consumer wants a good product. If the product is good afterwards, they don't care if you spent 100 hours on it or 10,000 hours on it, right? You're just not going to convince them if the project's bad. Or if the rights around it are bad, you know? Yeah. And a lot of this statement just seems, well, this is the way it is, you know. I just got a little sneak peek of the end of it, and oh, it's something.
Yeah, it's just like complete nihilistic appeal to authority and apathy all rolled up into this one ball of misrepresentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Gaming Brethren said we're having a gamer moment right now. True. We are fighting against the man and the corpo shills. Let's see here. The petition needs 1 million EU signatures by July 31st. It didn't make that, so I don't know how that's going to work in retrospect of getting it afterwards. But I guess it still could cause some hurdles, or it seems to be gaining even more traction to move forward to lawmakers. Even if they manage to reach this threshold, the fundamental legal problems remain unchanged. Signature collections doesn't magically transform, we know this, transform legal impossible demands into viable policy. No, even Ross has understood that just because we do it this way doesn't mean they're going to make a law, but it will have politicians talk about it. Because in the EU and in UK, it actually does bring it to y'all's parliament, right? That's not something that happens in the US.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so funny though. Like these wannabe bureaucrats being like, "Oh, but the piece of paper, piece of paper said, the sacred parchment said," as if it's like some sort of like universal law that cannot be changed. Like, no, bro, it's a piece of paper. We can go back and revise it.
I'm sorry.
That's the whole premise.
That's just not
I don't
true.
know how
They
this
wrote it.
blows their minds, dude.
That's just not true. They wrote it in stone. You can't
Yeah.
change it when it's written in stone.
The friggin' Luke Skywalker over here, the sacred text.
The sacred text. Oh, this whole thing is like we can never change any laws ever once the government has established it, or we can't fight for our own rights. I mean, it's from a complete developer mindset, right? And like a developer that wants to give no grounds to the consumer. They just want to make their product and they want it to be sold and you should buy it, right? And I understand. Okay, there's a portion of me.
Consumer boy.
Yeah, just be a little consumer. And, I understand protections, right? I understand you wanting to protect your product. I understand not wanting it to be pirated. You want it to do well. So there's that understanding of that. But this has gone too far over to the point that we're losing our history in our games. And I think this is going to be a thing in the media industry too. If they start, once, who was it? Was it I thought Amazon? Did Amazon remove some stuff from people's? No, it was PlayStation. They removed games and movies from people's lists, right?
I know from personal experience, I bought one of the Godzilla films on Amazon Prime. So it wasn't just like direct subscription streaming. I bought the film, and then it was gone from my library.
Okay.
The Godzilla film for a bit from Legendary.
Yeah.
So they brought it back, and from my recollection, it was not put back into my library.
So you would have to buy it again. That's
Yeah.
nuts. Yeah, I see as this becomes more of a problem that this idea of stop killing games can flood into all types of media. What about the guy who wants to keep using Word but he's under a license and he doesn't want to go to the new version of Word? He wants to keep the current version he has, but eventually they'll force him into an update which will have all the new features he doesn't want.
Yeah, it's like that with Photoshop. Every time I open it up, there's a new AI feature, and I'm like, I don't care.
Same thing with what do I use? I use DaVinci when I'm pulling in my edits and stuff like that. And it's like every week there's an update on it, and adding new features. We're going to do this and this. What is SK? What is Stop Killing Games is asking for isn't consumer protection. Okay. I mean, that's an opinion.
It is. Let's see where you go with this.
Yeah. It's a fundamental rewriting of intellectual property law. Okay. Yeah. Contract law. Yeah. The entire legal hierarchy that governs digital commerce. How dare you go after our legal hierarchy? How dare you want change from your overlords?
Paper. The document says. Yeah.
Don't.
No. I mean, okay. Changing the copyright law and IP law to be like the people who bought it still own it, but then you can't sell it anymore. Oh my God, society will collapse and we will turn into Mad Max.
Yeah, and just suddenly everyone's going to start pirating all games, or no one's going to buy a game until it's almost dead, and then they want the consumer convenience to override copyright protections. It's not even saying it's not overriding copyright protections. If this goes into play and I can keep a game that's dead, if I then copy the code of that game and start selling it online, I'm still breaking copyright. You can come after me for that. Or even if I'm copying it and spreading it around, that might go against copyright and the protections will still be there. So, which is legally impossible under EU jurisprudence. I haven't heard that word before.
I guess that's precedent, he's trying to say.
I think that's
Another
what.
word for it.
Yeah, maybe.
Again, impossible. No, it isn't.
No,
Laws can
it
be
isn't.
rechanged. Laws can be rewritten. Laws can be amended. I don't get why they're like, the piece of paper says this, therefore.
Yeah, we
Like,
here in America have, one of the oldest government documents in the world, the Constitution, and it can be amended even to this day. It doesn't get amended as often, but it can. A million signatures doesn't change legal reality. It does show that people are wanting this change. It forces the European Commission to formally explain why these demands contradict existing law. No, it's to have a conversation about that law.
yeah.
Even
See
even
how
with
we can further improve it.
yeah, it's hey, it's gone too far into it's a checks and balances, right? Hey, it's gone too far into the producers, the publishers realm, and people aren't happy with that. Maybe we can bring it back somewhere so that consumers still have the rights. They can still make money off of it, you know, and it's good to go, or they don't lose money off of it. Uh, Even with maximum public support, the campaign asks legislators to violate EU treaty obligations.
Just saying
Now,
the same thing over and over. I'm just going to say the same thing back. Laws can be amended.
yeah, override established legal hierarchies and fundamentally alter the relationship between intellectual property rights and consumer protections. So I have a question. Where do these consumer protections come from? Like, there was a point where these didn't exist, and we had to create them for them to become a thing, because companies would just, walk all over you. You talk into like the olden days where kids were working in uh, factories, and companies could do whatever they want, dumping.
See, the way that confuses me, because the way he's talking about it, I would have assumed that these laws come from just based in reality, handed down from an ethereal Lovecraftian god, and they cannot be changed. They are fundamental, like the laws of physics.
Oh. Cthulhu is chaos, so he definitely didn't create these laws, but we got to find out which one did and put him back to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
No amount of signatures can make the legal impossible become legally viable. Where does this impossible come? Like, it's over and over and over again. It's just impossible. We can't do anything.
He's never explained how it is possible. He's cited completely irrelevant laws for other completely different consumer rights subject matter, and he just has not explained like in depth on how this is impossible to achieve.
Yeah.
And like I said, I suspect it's because he does not want to go into specifics, because then people like you and me can be like, oh, well, here's the alternative. Here's the solution.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from a quick read, like us doing it on stream right here, like now, and reacting to this, for me to seriously look at these data protection laws and stuff like that, I have to look them up. And you're talking about, hundreds of paragraphs sometimes of stuff to try and, like, let's see, this directive has where is it? The final one. There's even more underneath it about the individual laws and, ratifications, not ratifications, but changes. There's 3 chapters, like 70 something plus paragraph, or 67 plus a bunch of other paragraphs after that, another like 30 or 40 that I would have to go to try and find, which I probably won't find, right? It's not in there. We've already established that a lot of these aren't pertaining to Stop Killing Games. So for the average person reading this, they're like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing in the UK, and they just run with it. They're like, oh, well, Pirate Software made a good take here.
That's the thing, right? Because it's like in my job, I have to like do annually go over and sit a little test on data protection.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously in the legal documents and stuff, you've got chapters and chapters and paragraphs of writing. But to boil it down into a more simplistic like explanation, it's just literally how to store it, how long to store it, the protection of it, and like making sure that you comply with allowing the person to have access and rectifying any mistakes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we have the same kind of data protection laws in the United States. There's been issues over it because of a lot of the data, you know, the data collection stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's after you explained it to me, I'm like, oh yeah, that has nothing to do with me downloading the game. I feel like you could say, all right, if this is a real problem, why does Steam not have a problem sending downloads all across the EU? Like, wouldn't wouldn't that mean that they couldn't do that because they're transferring data? What's the difference between Steam doing it and me getting it from the company downloaded?
That's a point, right? Because when you say data, sending data, some people might think data is in the game files, protecting game files data. So again, it's like a further layer of obfuscation.
Yeah, because I mean, that's immediately when I first read it, that's immediately what I thought was the files for the game. But you bringing it up, that's not what data protection laws are for.
Yeah.
I used to work at a financial institution, so it's all about that information and PPI and how to protect it. So now,
probably very
yeah, very similar. Conclusion: when activism ignores law. Here we go. The Stop Killing Games movement represents the worst kind of activism. Hey, so they're the anti-woke? That's something I can jump on. Well-intentioned but legally illiterate demands that ignore existing protections while asking for impossible remedies. I mean, most of this, you could cut out a good portion of this and say the same nothing. To be clear, games preservation is a legitimate concern. Digital works can disappear forever when servers shut down, and there's real cultural value in maintaining access to gaming history. But the fact that that problem exists doesn't justify legally impossible solutions or activism built on fundamental misunderstandings of law. Jesus Christ.
Again, this super arrogant, like you're just uneducated, basically.
Yeah.
Answer, which is there's no leeway for discussion. There's there's no room for solutions or resolutions to these issues. It's the verbal agreement equivalent of when a toddler just throws their body on the ground and refuses to move.
Yeah, it's you can't deal with this situation. I can watch me move that toddler.
Yeah. Now we're just having to pick them up and hoist them like a sack of spuds, as my grandfather said.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Oh man, see, my mom had a very effective method. She would look at me and say, well, at least I remember it from my teenage years, but as a toddler even, she's like, if you don't get up, I'm gonna beat you here right in front of God and everybody. And you're pretty quick to get up and get moving at that point.
I don't know if we can do that to Pirate.
No, I don't know if we can. But we will drag him kicking and screaming if he continues to try and dog this movement until something happens. Every country.
Groundhog Day when it comes to consumer rights, it is just like this stonewalling and, like I said, verbal toddler tantruming, and consumer rights, consumers and customers have to appeal to the government, unfortunately, because these CEOs, these people in high places just refuse to move with the times.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing when it's, when it was like a small business that you can boycott, but boycotts are not effective anymore. Because it's so widespread, like the idea of trying to get masses of, even like the Bud Light situation with the trans girl, it was like it didn't really do anything. Bud Light, the thing ended. So when companies make these decisions, and companies have a lot more money to lobby, especially in the United States, that it's one-sided for the consumer. So the only thing we can have, which I don't like, government regulation, but it's the only recipe we have to fight these massive mega corporations now.
Yeah, it's like, I do put a partial, like, when it comes to boycotting, I do put a partial bit of claim on the weak-willed nature of, like, gamers as a whole. They will cave very easily, but at the same time, the odds are super stacked against boycotts because of, like you said, the international market, how impossible it's going to be to reach tens of millions of people. If it was something like Call of Duty or Fortnite, it's impossible to let 10 million, a million people. Look how hard it was to get a million people to recognize this. So
Yeah.
when you get like tens of millions of people internationally with multiple languages, that makes it extremely hard. And then you're going up against this monolith with, multiple billions in their in cash in hand, not just assets. They do have a lot, billions in cash in hand, that they can spend on, marketing and research and development for marketing to best optimize how to, like, manipulate the human mind. There's a lot of money being spent into that, and so yeah, it is going to be nigh impossible for a boycott to work. So this, like, don't like it, don't buy it, is just not feasible.
Yeah, it's a complete nothing on that. And even with that case, like, a lot of us who get on here and scream about this stuff on the internet, there's a huge majority that believes that it's always necessarily doing something, but most normie consumers of playing video games, the average guy who's playing on his couch and stuff like that, isn't that in touch online with what's going on. Like, I went to my friends and talked to them about some of the stuff that goes on in gaming, or like even around wokeness and stuff like that. Like, they've heard the idea because it's become more mainstream, but they don't know the individual cases. Like, you tell them about Assassin's Creed, where there was like, oh yeah, I heard something about that was woke. It was a good game though.
Yeah, we are winning though.
Yeah, we are winning, 100%, 100%. I was told that's what I was told.
No, I was making fun of them, who was like, we are winning. We are so winning.
Yes, we are so saving gaming from blacks destroying Asian people in a video game. Even countries with fair use doctrines can't solve this through copyright exceptions. The U.S., despite its fair use, has nothing to fucking do with this. Despite the broader fair use protections, still seems that games disappear when publishers shut down servers. Fair use doesn't automatically create preservation rights for commercial software. Yeah, because that's not what it's about. Like, fair use is about being able to make parody of it. But if I were to go create from the ground up the code for another game that has died, the company who owns that license for that game can absolutely come in and take me down, whether I'm making money or not, in the United States. Yep. And attempts to preserve online games through emulation and reserve engineering. Don't worry, we're almost done. Online-only games through emulation and reverse engineering remain legally precautious, even under more pervasive copyright regimes. Ross Scott spent a year.
The emulation. You went through emulation. We can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's not an argument.
Yeah. The only way emulation works is if the company lets it happen. In a lot of cases, they don't. Especially when a game, like, you'll see it happen when a game gets remastered or something like that. They will start hitting the emulation companies for that game because they want it to sell. Ross spent a year claiming laws were undefined when they're actually comprehensive. You showed none of that, and clearly opposed to his goal. The movement asks for government regulation while ignoring the extensive regulatory framework that already exists. This is the same thing. They demanded rights to contradict fundamental legal principles while dismissing the consumer protections already available. If Stop Killing Games supporters actually cared about consumer protection, they'd focus on strengthening disclosure requirements under existing unfair commercial practices and law and pushing for clear expiration dates. Ah, I fucking hate this guy.
No,
You
dude.
should just tell us. Yeah.
Yeah, you should tell us when you're going to get your dick out and put it in our
Yeah.
ass.
Yeah.
You know, okay. What?
Oh, I didn't say anything. I was just moaning at the sheer retardation of that statement. The problem is that they can just tell us where they're going to turn it off. The problem is we don't own it anymore. It's been the argument since digital was a thing. These are achievable goals within existing legal framework. Instead, they choose to tilt a copyright windmill while claiming that law doesn't exist. The results is predictable, a campaign built on legal impossibilities, and a leader who's already announced he's giving up regardless of the outcome. Sometimes the law is exactly what it appears to be. The problem isn't legal uncertainty, it's activist delusion. Thank you, Pirate Software. This was complete garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of references to things that didn't make sense. We've got, like I said in the chat, we had Ross on and we spoke to him and I said, there is one particular thing, I can't remember it now because it was 11 months ago we had that discussion, but there was one thing I saw that I went over that with him and he came back and gave his answer as to why it's not applicable. Mm-hmm. So I was like, fair enough, and just
went from there.
Yeah, we need this. Yeah.
I mean, I would go over all of these regulations and documents that they're talking about and stuff like that, but they didn't give any direct, reasons. They didn't show me any of the evidence. They just were very vague. So it's like I feel like I don't even have to. I don't have to go search for the evidence if you're not telling it to me. You need to prove to me why Stop Killing Games is ignoring all of this stuff, and it's clear that it isn't, with some that are instantly verifiable as being wrong or misleading. So yeah, that was that was a good end to my scream. I'm glad you brought that up, and thanks for coming on to talk about it. So
glad to be on.
That's right. It's good. So I'm probably going to end stream here. I think it's just me and you now at this point. Towards the end of the night.
Late for the Americans.
Yeah. It's what 11:45 here, so not bad. But I again, thank you for coming on. If you ever want to come on again, I think one thing I am going to start doing is giving out perms to certain people, like Vincent, probably you, and some of the others, especially like content creators around me, so they can come in and talk, because I like having people on. Unfortunately, I can't get people like Eric to come on, so.
That's good. Yeah, hopefully next time I'll have a better mic. I'll be outside. I was outside on my phone today, so I didn't wake up everyone in the block.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll have my computer mic hopefully next time, and things will be a bit better quality.
Yeah, not a problem. I think you sounded fine on here, at least from my side. But anyway, until next time we meet, Bud, and for the rest of you guys, we'll see you next time.
See you.